What's on, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Ross, I like games, and today we're going to rank all the leaders from Paramount War. There are 8 leaders in Paramount War, so I thought it might be fun to go and rank them 1 to 8. Now, a couple of caveats before we get going. First of all, there's only a few of these that really made an impact on the metagame over in Japan, so for the rest of them, it's my personal feelings, testing, etc. And also, they very much split into tiers. So you can argue around the tiers if you like, but I do feel very, very confident in the actual tiers themselves. So starting off at number 8, in the 3rd tier, we've got Magellan. And I don't think Magellan is necessarily that much worse. I think the bottom 4 from 5 to 8, you can mix them around as much as you like. And you could put Magellan at number 5 and I wouldn't have a huge problem with that. I'm saying that for me personally, my opinion is I'm putting it at number 8. On your turn, once per turn, when a Dawn card is returned from the field to the Dawn deck, this leader gains 1,000 power during this turn. And that's it. You gain 1,000 power, but it only works when you put a Dawn back to your deck. And we all know that there are a million different times during the game that purple decks do that. The reason this is a purple leader is because this is what purple decks do. But you only gain 1,000 power, that's it, and there are still going to be plenty of turns where this doesn't actually work. And for that reason, ladies and gentlemen, I can't get behind this, I'm afraid. Sorry. I don't think that's why I'm putting it at number 8, frankly. That's why it's number 8. In at number 7, we've got Z. And here we've got a dual color leader, 5,000 power, 4 life. Remember, with one exception, which we'll see in this video, you are talking 5,000 power for all of them. And monocolor leaders have 5 life, dual color leaders have 4. And what we've got here is when attacking, Dawn -4. KO up to one of your opponent's characters of a cost of 3 or less. Then this leader gains 1,000 power. And I like this more than Magellan because you basically gaining 1,000 power whenever you like. You've always got this skill on board, as long as you've got at least 4 Dawn on the field. And you're also KOing a character. And of course, a 3,000 power or less character could well be a blocker. So you get rid of a blocker, gain yourself power. Your opponent can't counter the extra power. And you've just gotten rid of their blocker. So now the attack goes through. Yay! So that's why I like it a little bit more. I still think it's awkward. And I think you've got to, having to do the Dawn -4, you're realistically not going to do it every turn. It's only going to activate a few times during the game. And that's essentially why this ends up quite low down on the list. It's not that it's terrible, it's that it's awkward. And I do think that's pretty gosh darned important. In at number 6, we've got Monkey the Garp. Now, this is one that I might have too high, but again, all these 4 are very close together. We got a 5,000 power, 4 life. It's dual color red and black. And obviously that means you got access to all the red and black cards, which is lovely. But when you attach a Dawn to this leader or one of your characters, you give up to one of your opponent's 7 cost or lower characters -1 to their cost during this turn. This is essentially the leader you play if you want to play black, but have access to red cards. Because this is very clearly a skill, lowering the cost of your opponent's cards, that is a black skill. That is what black decks look to try and do. But because it's a dual color leader, you can also use red. I think if you want to go pure black, there are better leaders, but I do think this is kind of useful for the reasons I've just outlined. And then in at number 5, at the top of the bottom tier here, we've got Smoker. Now, in terms of Smoker here, I do like him as a character a bit more than the others, so maybe I'm overrating it slightly. But Dawn X1, activate main, once per turn, give up to one of your opponents -1 to their cost during this turn, and then if there's a character with a cost of 0 in play, you gain 1,000 power. This is what I kind of meant when I said if you want to just play black, there are better leaders for lowering cost. Firstly, it's Dawn X1 to lower a cost. You can always get that rolling if you want to. And secondly, you're boosting yourself by 1,000 power. And I know it's only if there's a 0 cost character in play, but firstly, you can play a 0 cost character. That would work. And secondly, you know what? The whole point of black decks is lowering your opponent's cost. So if you haven't got your opponent to have a zero cost character in play, either they don't have any characters in play, that's a win for you, or you're just not winning the game anyway because your deck ain't working. So, yeah, that's why I'm putting Smoker in at number 5. Now, in at number 4, we've got Sanji, and here we're moving into the second tier. I do think these two are a cut above the ones we've just seen. Now, what we got with Sanji here is a dual colour leader, green and blue, which is lovely in terms of opening up a bunch of options. And we got a really nice skill once per turn when you play a character without an effect from your hand. If you have 3 or fewer characters in play, set up to 2 of your Don as active, and I love this. Now, I'm not loving the fact that you're going to be playing characters without an effect, and remember, that basically means blank characters. It doesn't mean a blocker or a character with trigger. They are effects, they don't count. It's got to be a vanilla character. But if you're willing to play some vanilla characters, you get essentially 2 extra Don per turn. Because you get to use your 2 Don to pay for a card, and then get 2 of them back instantly. This one has been jumping up in price more so with the English release than it did on the Japanese release, and I do think that's because there's a bit more hype around this card. I'm putting this at number 4 because looking at Japanese results from OP-02, I didn't see as much of this as I did of the number 3 leader, but I do think there is a lot of potential here, and I think it's awkward trying to balance and have the characters without skills, but I do think that just having extra Don is awesome. But I do feel good at Kenemon as number 3. I'm putting Kenemon in the same tier as Sanji, but I do believe it is a bit above. Here we have a mono green leader, but we've got activate main once per turn. If you have 1 or less characters in play, reduce the play cost of the next 3 cost or higher Wano country type character by 1 during this turn. I love it. Now, admittedly, this is playing with few characters in play, I get it, but when you don't have many characters, you can play characters more cheaply. Now, it does really hem you into playing Wano country characters, I understand, and if you've got 2 characters on the board, it doesn't work. But the fact that you can be playing characters more cheaply is brilliant. Your opponent plays a board wipe, you recover faster. Early game, you get characters in cheaper. Whatever happens, either you've got a decent board state or you've got cheaper characters, and I just love the idea of that, honestly. Plus, I saw this doing well in a bunch of tournaments in Japan. Now, the top tier here, we got 2 characters, and you really could switch them around, but in at number 2, I'm putting Emporio Ivankov. And this is one of those characters, right, that when I first saw it, I thought, oh, that could be good. That's got a bit of potential. And then I started, really watching the Japanese meta revolve and seeing how it went and seeing the kind of builds. And then I was like, oh yeah, this is kind of borderline broken. Like, with the advent of OP-02, this is, by a margin, the best blue leader. And honestly, right, if you put this in at number 1, I wouldn't be terribly upset with you. This is a phenomenal leader. It's great, frankly. It's great. However, what it does is, end of your turn, if you have 0 cards in hand, draw 2. Now, you got to have 0 cards in hand, but you build a deck around it. You have a bunch of cards you can play quite nicely. You engineer it to have 0 cards in hand. And then it's just draw power. And One Piece is a game where draw power is at a premium. This is not a game where you're drawing lots of cards all the time. The draw power in this game is frankly kind of poor. So, getting to draw basically 2 cards at the end of your turn, huge. It also means if there's a particular event card that you want to be playing during your opponent's turn, you could potentially draw it at the end of your turn with this skill, which would be lovely. It's one of those that looks like it's got potential on the face of it, but if you haven't seen it already, trust me, you will. This is a card which is going to see a lot of play. This is going to be a major player in the OP-02 meta. And that means that in at number 1, we've got Edward Newgate. Now, this one I had a little bit of trouble with, whether it should go 1 or 2. Because in the OP-02 meta, there is a strong argument that Roanoa Zoro from Romance Dawn is better. And certainly over in Japan, we saw Edward Newgate winning. I saw a bunch of winning Edward Newgate lists, But I think on balance, and I didn't see every single Japanese tournament, obviously, but I think on balance, Zoro was the better leader in the OP-02 meta over in Japan. The thing is, when you go into the OP-03 meta, Edward Newgate is the best leader in the game, unquestionably, at least at this early stage. So it's really whether you want to go strictly OP-02 meta, in which case Ivankov's got a much stronger argument, although it's still very close between them, or whether you want to include the OP-03 meta, in which case Newgate wins by a bit of a margin. You could switch these around. I feel good putting Newgate in at number 1, but if you wanted to swap these two, I'd be fine with that. If you wanted to put any of the other 6 leaders at number 1, we'd have to have a conversation. I'm not sure I'm okay with that. Now, what we got with Edward Newgate is the exception. The only leader that's got 6,000 power. The only leader that's got 6 life. And that extra 1,000 power is huge. Absolutely huge. But you've also got end of your turn, add a card from the top of your life area to your hand. Now this is awkward, because obviously it takes away one of your life and gets your opponent closer to winning the game. But it's also like drawing a card at the end of your turn. It gives you card advantage. The goal here is basically set up a big enough, aggressive enough start that giving up these few life doesn't really matter. You do some blocking, you do some countering, jobs are good. And I have done videos showing you Emporio Ivankov and Edward Newgate on this channel, so I would go and check them out. They'll give you a bit more information. But basically, this is one of those which is just great. And I do think there are 2 great leaders in Paramount War, and it is Ivankov and Newgate. And I do think Kenemon is good, and I think it's going to see a bunch of play, and I don't think there's a terrible leader on this list. I think there's a clear half of them that aren't as good as the other half. And I think there are some I'd be surprised to see topping tournaments. But you can imagine cards being released or decks being built that would make any of these at least potentially viable. For now, ladies and gentlemen, I've given you my list of 1 to 8, and I would love it if in the comment section you'd give me your list of 1 to 8. So let me know in the comment section, would you? Go nuts! Be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWasi. That's where we talk One Piece and a bunch of other card games. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCGradio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts, join a Discord, all kinds of fun things. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching Wasi Plays.